Hey, this is Sebastian, and I'm here to talk to you about product feedback analysis. If you're a product manager, a designer in user experience or engineering, you might be interested in understanding new ways of how to analyze user feedback. The first method I'll talk about is the analysis synthesis creative method. And this is from Hinton Shaw. He gave a talk in November 2019, and I actually asked him this question at the end of his talk, and he spent 3 minutes going into pretty detail about how he approaches user feedback analysis. And the main thing that he pointed out was, what's the process for analyzing in a quantitative way, essentially just open text or open feedback that I get from users. And he mentioned that his team reads everything. So they might have thousands of responses and they go through each one. And they spend time categorizing each one of those responses into different groups. So they use Excel and spreadsheets and Airtable to do that. And he mentioned something that was really interesting. He said this was not the hard part. This part is just time consuming. And he said the hard part for somebody to actually synthesize this data is taking that into account and understanding what does this mean. So like you have 1,000 different responses, you group those into buckets, and he's not trying to go in and solve each one of those different buckets, but he's trying to understand what's one thing that I can do to solve all of these different problems. And the main takeaways that I had was that you need to spend time on analysis, but you need to spend your brain power on the synthesis and the creative part. And this flow of taking lots of different problems and having one simple solution to solve them, it was really interesting for me in terms of how do you understand and process user feedback. The second framework I'll talk about is the RUF method. This is from Sean Kramer, and he works at Amazon as the head of the voice of the customer. I'd like to thank Tim Jones at Launchmatic for telling me about this over coffee actually this week. So I haven't heard about this before, but there's this article from 2016 saying, how to understand customer feedback in the RUF way. And RUF stands for reliability. So this is the performance, the uptime, the bugs, usability, how easy are features to find, the complexity of the product, navigation, and then functionality, right? These are the missing features, things that customers would like. And so my takeaway from this was, I translated reliability into engineering. So these are problems that the engineering team would probably tackle. Usability into maybe more user experience issues. There's a little bit of product there. And then functionality into these are product things, right? The product team needs to focus on that. And the thing that I really liked about this framework was that it quantifies all of your different issues that customers are talking about by the team. So a team member on your engineering team or your product team or UX team or whatever team can take point if 70% of the issues from that quarter that users are talking about falls under one of these categories for that specific team. And then the last framework I'll talk about is the Spotlight framework. I essentially just Googled for customer feedback analysis, and this is one of the top hits, and it seemed really interesting. This is from David Cancel. He's the CEO at Drift. And he wrote this great blog post from 2016 on it. Highly recommend checking it out. And there's 3 portions to this. So if a customer starts asking questions related to what happens when, I try to, this is related to the user experience portion of your product. And your UX team needs to look into this customer feedback. But there's more larger questions too, right? There's more can UI, how do you compare to, how are you different than? And these are things that maybe your product or product marketing team might want to look into. And then lastly, there's questions around positioning. So when you get feedback like, I'm probably not your target customer, I'm not sure, I'm sure I'm wrong, but I thought about, these are questions that maybe more on like a B2B level. Or maybe like an enterprise customer might ask, as opposed to some of the previous frameworks for user feedback analysis that you might get from thousands of consumer customers. And so the thing I really liked about this framework was that especially for these types of questions, the product may not be your number one problem, right? It might be marketing, it might be sales, it might be something else completely. And especially for a new product, something that's just getting launched, those are the types of questions and feedback you might get from early users. And so taking that out of maybe a more an older product that's much more mature, might be specific engineering issues or specific product issues. These are much higher level related to your business. And so there's three different frameworks that I've found out about and learned about. I wanted to share those with you. If you have anything else that's been really interesting for you, I'd love to hear from you, and comment or share or let me know a framework that's really change the way that you look at customer feedback and understanding and analyzing the feedback you get from your customers.